we're back. Thanks for staying with us. And listen to Planet Green Shoes episode number 392.
What's the name again?
Trump tears and alligator ears.
Oh, my.
Girl Scout cookie.
Things are degrading fast here on
Trump and
on
Girl
PGT.
Scout cookies.
So, we have in the studio friend and longtime advocate of informed medical cannabis, Gersh Avery, as I mentioned, also known as Peanut Butter. Gersh, you heard some of the conversation topics that we've been talking about. They probably haven't changed much from the other stuff we talked about back in the day. And a lot has gone on. I mean, we've gotten some clarity, I would say, over time with some aspects of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. But at the time that all these are coming into fruition and seemingly giving us some settledness, the Medical Marijuana License Facility Act comes about, which some people have concerns about as it relates to the caregiving and the impact it's going to have for patients. And, of course, we have the legalization on the ballot. In other words, a lot has gone on. What's your take on some of this? Do you think we're better off than we were 10 years ago, or 7 years ago, 10 years ago? Are you excited, or do you feel a sense of accomplishment from the work that's been going on?
Well, I'm concerned about a particular direction. We're looking at medical application for medical marijuana in the state right now. I mean, we're coming up at a point in time when we're looking at the recreational being implemented, but for the time being, we're working with the medical, and we have been for nearly 10 years now. And we are still not at a point where we are looking at the therapeutic applications of marijuana. We are still, and all the lawmakers and all the doctors and everything else, they're still looking at the palliative effects of cannabis. And when we have this very, very valuable medicine that can be used to cure diseases. That's what I'm talking about, therapeutic uses, to actually address the disease itself and to cure the disease, to treat the disease, not just the symptom. I have a backache. Okay, this helps the backache. No, I'm talking about making the swollen disc reduce in size, to remove the source or the cause of the pain. This is a therapeutic application of marijuana, and we're not seeing that. I heard about one place that was being approved up in Bay City, I think it was, where they're looking at a medical research facility being licensed under this new act. Some sort of medical and I find a great hope in that, where they're actually going to study marijuana and its benefits.
It could be.
It's something that's very, very long overdue. I mean, it's a fantastic medicine that our doctors don't know. What do we use it for? I don't know. Why don't they know? Because their school hasn't taught them. Why hasn't their school taught them? Because the school doesn't know. Why doesn't the school know? Because it's been forbidden knowledge for 80 years. Everybody's brain dead on the topic except for the people on the streets now.
Right. You raise a good point, and I want to say this because I meant to ask Howard about this, Jeff and Jim and Gersh. He was discussing he was supporting this idea of it becoming a Schedule 3 and purportedly being prescribed.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask him, do you think there really is going to be a time where drugstores are going to have plant material?
If it went Schedule 3...
Plant material is never going to be...
No, that would never happen.
Never.
No.
So we're not even really talking about plant material. You know what I mean? If we're talking about...
If it goes Schedule 3, everything changes drastically.
What about SB 660?
SB 660...
That's still hanging around.
Yep, and it kicks in as soon as it gets rescheduled.
And that means drugstores are the only place that can handle
That's right.
the vegetable matter.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Well,
is that what 660 does? I think it does.
660 allows for pharmaceutical-grade marijuana to be sold, whatever that means. And I think that they were trying to parallel that into what might be some regulated system.
Yep.
There's conditions that have to take place, but at the same time they do...
Their system required pharmacy participation.
Yeah, right. The idea was for it to be
so, at some point, somebody's figured, Rick Jones apparently figured that, we can get the drugstores to sell this. I don't know why.
Well, the drugstores were lobbying for that.
The drugstores are already going to be selling it.
Okay.
So, like Epidiolex, that's the beginning of the undoing of medical marijuana as we know
That's
it.
an extract.
Yeah, and it's going to be. I mean, it's highly controlled dosing, which I think is positive, but it's CBD only, and it removes all that flexibility and granularity that people have gained through the use of this act.
We have so much to learn about this plant because it's not just marijuana is not simply a THC delivery mechanism. Like cigarettes were not just a nicotine delivery method or tool. Okay, the tobacco companies started looking at it that way, and they started manipulating the nicotine strengths, and they made things so it was a much more addictive drug that way.
But that's what'll happen.
But and that's what they're talking about for that's what they're looking at for marijuana. But they're completely oblivious to the entourage effects, where you're talking about the combined effect of the THC with a trace of, say, for instance, beta-caryophyllene. I mean, that greatly enhances the pain-killing abilities of the THC. And that is completely overlooked with the single compound delivery mechanisms that we're seeing these days that's so popular with our drug systems that are being taught in our college and medical schools and stuff like that. That's what the FDA is all about. You have one compound. If you're talking about marijuana, that one compound is THC. And we can ignore everything else, right? That's what we're expected to do, is ignore everything else about the plant and really think of it only as a THC-only delivery mechanism. And that is so far wrong, it's unreal.
Agreed.
It's what will happen.
But, a good question is what happens, like you say, upon rescheduling, then what happens is the 660 goes into effect and this pharmaceutical grade marijuana system goes into effect.
Yeah.
And then what with the Facilities Licensing Act?
They amended out of
now
existence.
got, like, two separate things. So at the end of the day, you fall back into where is the rational basis for this being a Schedule 1 drug? Right? There is none. There's no rational basis for it. Something that's now clearly been recognized to have accepted medical use and no apparent, overwhelming danger. But then the question really becomes, should it be a controlled substance at all? In other words, treated like opium and all that, because pharmacies sell controlled substances.
They do.
They sell other prescription drugs.
Correct.
That are not controlled substances, antibiotics and whatnot. And they probably also sell vitamins and supplements and different things like that. Right?
Used to be able to get cigarettes at a lot of them.
Right.
Oddly
well,
enough.
I can get cigarettes in my Rite Aid.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rite Aid. CVS gave them up, I think.
CVS with cigarettes.
Yeah. So, we get hung up thinking about, okay, if you move it from Schedule 1, well, then it goes to Schedule 2, which is something also that was in 660. But there's no rational basis for that either.
No, they pulled that out of 660 before they passed it. They changed it from changing to Schedule 2 to any change of scheduling at all.
Correct. However, part of the of 660 also changed Schedule 2 of the Controlled Substances Act and said that marijuana, when it's used to alleviate debilitating conditions as outlined in the MMMA, is a Schedule 2 drug.
Yep, it sure did.
That's a part of 660.
And it's already in effect. That part of 660 was not dependent on anything that the federal government does.
I never knew that about 660.
Yep.
Schedule 2 drug. It's already a Schedule 2 drug in Michigan.
Yep.
Well, it's a Schedule 2 drug if used to treat a debilitating condition as defined by the Medical Marijuana Act, which is curious. How can it be both a controlled substance, a Schedule 2 drug, and a Schedule 1 drug? It's the same thing. How can it be two different things? One is, there's a little bit of
Schedule 3.
Right. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. So the question really becomes: should it be a controlled substance or not a controlled substance?
If we want things to remain the way they are today, where we have the freedom to manipulate the plant the way we see fit to treat ourselves and our family members, then it has to be unscheduled. Because the second that it changes schedule, like people view Schedule 1 as very restrictive, but in our world it really means that the established regulatory system doesn't get a say. They don't have their hands in it.
Right.
Once it goes Schedule 2, Schedule 3, that system takes hold, and that system, I mean, you think the MMFLA is costly.
So what we're going to have are two systems running side by side. Three, actually, if you include the MMA.
Maybe. I don't know that it's interesting to me because that regulatory system is so powerful and so well funded that even though the feds aren't in here shutting places down today, I think that might start again once it's been rescheduled, because you'll have these very powerful forces pushing the federal government to eliminate these people who are not participating in the system that has been set up to regulate all of this. And I don't know. I fear rescheduling, and I know it's the right thing, and I know it's the next logical step. But I do believe that things will change significantly, and I fear what that will look like.
Yeah, I'm no rescheduling fan at all. I'm talking about descheduling.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it needs to be off the schedule, period.
And the implementation of the scheduling system is based, as we know, on the lie that there's no medicinal benefits and whatnot. All I'm saying is, if you have a clear conflict currently between the Public Health Code and the Controlled Substances Act and the Facilities Licensing Act. Basically what's happening here is we're licensing criminal enterprise.
Yeah.
Right.
Licensing people to distribute a Schedule 1 controlled substance.
Right. and the same logic applies as if it's Schedule 5 controlled substance.
Yeah, right.
It's like it's still, a Schedule 5 controlled substance can only be
dispensed by a pharmacy.
By a pharmacist on prescription by a doctor and all nine things. So you have two systems that they can't stand together for the proposition that this should be a controlled substance, really. But the question of, let's say tomorrow, the federal government rescheduled it to Schedule 2, which I don't think is going to happen. I think what will happen is they're going to try to, this Booker's bill may get some traction and stuff like that and try to send it back to the states. I think that there will be a move to let the states take care of it in some way. But my question is, like, whether they deschedule it or reschedule it at the federal level, we live with 660. It goes into effect without anything else having to happen.
That's right.
So on that day, what happens? We'll actually have three different marijuana systems, medical marijuana systems in the state, and the state's still claiming that it has no medical use.
660 is ridiculous. The whole thing is a sham. I mean,
it exists.
Oh, it does, but it's ridiculous, and I say that in the respect that once it's rescheduled, there's already a system. There's a federal system, and that federal system is going to override 660. There may be posturing and this and that, but the rescheduling, I mean, once it's rescheduled federally, 660, I think, becomes highly irrelevant.
Remains irrelevant.
Well, except that it goes into effect.
Right, but what effect would it have?
Then they can start. You could apply to the state to grow pharmaceutical grade marijuana.
But then the state would have to be in the business of overriding the distribution network that exists at the federal level already.
I don't think it's practical to try to actually utilize it, but I think one of the points that Jeff made, if I'm not mistaken, is that it would be yet another example of how we're calling it medical marijuana on one hand and then denying that it's has medical
that's true.
benefits on the other.
Yes, that's a very good point.
Right.
It's very good. It's very good.
Jamie can be well.
I think all of it is just ridiculous, but
you're right.
It is what it is. I haven't been as involved in the politics of this issue as someone like Jamie, but I've been here for a minute, and I can say I have seen some really ridiculous shit when it comes to the politics of this plant.
I've been in law 30 years, and it's sausage.
It sure is.
It's sausage.
It sure is.
This issue.
It's bad, and I don't think it's going to get any better.